Welcome again to our Wednesday Keystroke Live. Today we're just going to have a short session on some tech tips. These are things we've kind of learned over the last few weeks. A lot of things coming up with Windows 10, just networking and so forth, and Windows updates, and talk about some higher level functions that Keystroke actually uses to communicate with the new credit card processing. So I'll go ahead and mute the crowd. If you have any questions, just use the chat button down below, and Nick and I will keep an eye on that and try to make sure we answer your questions until the end, and then we'll have an open forum. Thank you. All right, so again, today we're just going over some basic tech tips. In the last month or two, I've talked about Windows 10, and some of the updates, and it's coming soon, more than you know. Nothing too big or heavy on Windows 10 today, but I wanted to go through a few things. So as you know, we do Keystroke Live every Wednesday. Exception will be next Wednesday. As Nick mentioned, we have people out going to the RESPA show and the Dealer Summit that is this weekend in advance of that. And so we're not going to do a Keystroke Live next week on Wednesday. So we'll do that after that. A few things just to talk about. Some tech tips. We've kind of tried to been formulating some ideas here on what we see and what our customers are seeing when they update. Number one, Windows 10 is here. It's part of everyone's business life. We've been having it on most of our machines. Every tech here has a Windows 10 machine and another machine. Most of them are Windows 7. Some are Windows 7 Enterprise Edition. Some are Windows 7 Pro. Some are Windows 7 the POS Ready 7. Then we have Windows 10, a few varieties of that. They all pretty much act the same way. As you probably are aware, because you're seeing the messages too, that the free update ends in 2 days from now, on Friday. So I'm sure we're going to all be waiting for Friday afternoon when everyone says, I'm going to hit the OK button and make it happen now. And just be ready for it. We find out that your customers will do it on purpose, by accident, and I've actually had one of my machines update by accident because of one of the settings in Windows 10 says, update all machines on my local area network to Windows 10 once I've done Windows 10, and it just takes off and does it. The next reboot, all of a sudden, guess what? You're there. So just be ready for it. Remember that your customers will do it by themselves, regardless of planning and everything you've done. And they will call you and they will call us. And our role here in tech support is to identify problems, understand if there's a keystroke solution for those problems. But we don't really spend a lot of time sitting there working out all their printer issues and their networking issues. If we can't figure it out in 5 minutes on how to print a test page in Windows, we're going to say, well, it looks like your update to Windows 10, you might need to download a driver. Let me give you your Keystroke resellers' phone numbers. So you as resellers kind of need to be ready for your customers to just jump on board the Windows 10 train. I say at the bottom, and I'll come back to it, don't be afraid of the update. It's not the biggest thing in the world. Boy, the Y2K thing came around and scared everybody. Windows 10 shouldn't scare you. One of the things we did find out I want to kind of portray with this message here is that Windows Update for Windows 10 does an initial update, then it does its own little other updates, one by one, just like Windows used to do. Then it'll do a cumulative update, so there might be more than one reboot process in the works. What we found is that some people will see everything looks normal, they see their K drive, they see their F drive, whatever their map drive is, but the functionality of Keystroke either is not working, or they can't seem to get Keystroke to run, or their credit card processing might go down. So we found out just through trial and error and experience that if you run into this, you should check your Windows Update settings in Windows 10. To do this, you just go to the Start menu in Windows and select Settings. You can also click on the Start menu and type in Windows Update. And you'll see down in the bottom right it says Update and Security, and you click on that to see your Windows Update status. About 8 or 9 out of 10 calls we've had after we spent the time listening to the problem, trying to figure out if printers are working and so forth, went here and found that an update is pending. And the pending updates are a little different than they were in Windows 7 and Windows 8. Normally it would just bug you over and over and say, we're going to do an update, we're going to postpone it for 10 minutes. Would you like to restart now? It would keep bugging you over and over to restart. This is kind of sitting in the background and says, I've scheduled an update at 3 a.m. in the morning or something like that. And I haven't seen it so accurate in doing that. I'm a person that turns off my computer every night, and when I boot up, it boots up, doesn't say it's doing an update or anything, and I can still go in there and see that there's a pending update, and I have to hit the restart button. That's probably a fix that they're going to come out with, but keep in mind, Windows 10's kind of, I think, more along the lines that you have to say, I want to do it now. So keep in mind that the update for Windows Update causes some problems, and I'll kind of give you an example of where that might come in with Keystroke. Let me open up Keystroke. I just have a copy here open, and let's see. Oops, I think I have 2 copies open. This here is just an example of what we're using now. This is an authorization method for Merck EMV. Notice in here, if those of you that have set up the VX805 or the new ISC 250s with the RBA 17, excuse me, I hit enter there, you will see that we use TCP/IP. You've probably seen this before with the Cayenne Genius. You may not have seen it before necessarily with the KeyPay, but it actually applies to it too. So what Windows 10 is doing in this example here is that my machine is actually talking via TCP/IP to another server. It's actually not my Keystroke server. It's not my data server. That is actually what I call my communication server. It's the machine that's running the NetEPay program, the VANIV direct authorization method. And so this Keystroke application needs to talk at a very high level to that other machine. It has to be encrypted using Microsoft encryption. It has to be kept at a certain level of encryption, and you can't just run it as a standard user. Now, yes, you can run Keystroke as a standard user, but you have to make sure that the availability to talk between machine to machine at a very high level, and I use the word loosely as a high level, doesn't necessarily mean you have to be an administrator, but you have to be able to talk what they call the RSA AES encryption method to this server, and you have to send the transaction in that fashion. So,
excuse me, Mike, we're not seeing anything besides the camera right now.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think I found my problem. Hold on one second. Do you see Keystroke now?
There we go. You're back. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you for noticing that. So this is, thank you. Sorry about that. Right here is the Mercury Direct Authorization method that goes through NetEPay, and that tells this machine to talk to another machine, and it uses a server address. In our case, in our local area network, we use 10.1.8 series of numbers. We use static IPs, and this is telling Keystroke to talk from the server address to this machine right here. So my machine is going to talk using a high level of encryption that's going to be sent over to the NetEPay server, and this is used for our payment types. I'll back down a step and show you that this is just a payment type called our Visa MasterCard. But because it uses an authorization method that uses TCP/IP, you have to make sure that, number one, the firewall allows for Keystroke to talk to NetEPay. Number two, that I can talk at, I call it the high level of encryption between Keystroke and NetEPay. And the same thing applies with KeyPay. Some people will have a Windows update pending, and all of a sudden their transactions will stop working. And I always ask, did it work yesterday? When they say, yeah, it was working fine and we didn't change anything, this is usually where we end up. And then we say, well, I think we should just double check for Windows updates. And that leads me back to this presentation slide that we talk about. We have to go in and manually check for a Windows update. We had a lot of customers, a lot of your customers out there updated to Windows 10 last week and the week before. We spent some time in some other Keystroke Live talking about how to change your default printers, how to make sure you're up to speed with Windows 10. And we're finding out this week, or this last week, that a lot of people need to actually go into the update, search for an update, and what you'll find is there's a pending update waiting to be installed. And like I mentioned before, it waits and it sits there and waits for you to actually make the restart happen. Of course, this is all going to happen probably by Friday because that's the deadline and people are going to think free is good. So I'm going to go ahead and update by Friday because it's free. And I don't see any reason not to do that. But my example was just to show you in Keystroke that we don't just run Keystroke all by itself anymore. Keystroke will include in the Microsoft Windows Firewall, it'll include programs like Keystroke, KeyPay, and Keymail. Those are actually included in the setup program. NetEPay in its setup program will install a Windows Firewall exception for that. If you have other programs like Norton, McAfee, Kaspersky, any of those running, keep in mind that they may have their own firewall rules and exceptions, and those you'll have to add manually because we only do the ones for the Microsoft products. So the big point of this discussion today is pretty much look out for Windows updates because they're sitting there, they're waiting, and if the answer is, yeah, it was working yesterday, I had my EMV working, my chip cards are working, and today it stopped, there's probably a pending update on one or more machines. And it's not, I don't know if the jury's still out on it. It used to always be on a Tuesday. So Tuesday night, there would be an update. Wednesday morning, it would want to reboot, and that was the way the story was written. But I think nowadays it's a little different. I think nowadays you have to kind of go in and check, and it won't tell you, but we'll find out that there is a pending update. The next slide, I just want to kind of reiterate what we talked about in a previous session about mapping network drives on Windows 10. Also, during this pending updates, you'll notice that when you reboot your machine, because you might have mapped the drive as administrator before, and this is a screenshot I showed before that says if you want to map a drive, you should click the bottom checkbox that says connect using different credentials, put in the administrator name or a different name that's an administrator, and put in a password. And then the network drive does stay connected. If you've ever noticed that, hey, I've been booting up, I rebooted once or twice, and my network drive still doesn't come back unless I click on it or have to re-enter the credentials, guess what? There might be a Windows update pending. You should go back and take a look at that. And this last screenshot here is just a follow-up on that this is where you would type in a different name. Or if you weren't an administrator, you would click on Use Another Account down below. It'll ask you for the username and the credentials, meaning the password, and then you would go ahead and connect to it. So in summary, I just want to go back to kind of the main thing is that people are going to be going on to Windows 10 this week, whether you want them to or not. Keystroke version 8 is really set, ready to go, rock and rolling with Windows 10. Don't worry about anything. The Windows help files are there. I'd ask you to click yes to install them. Just be ready. Don't be afraid of the update. It's going to happen. More people are going to be on Windows 10 than you can ever imagine. I do want to also say that please be wary of the people that are on Windows 6.3 and they call and say, hey, I'm on Windows 10 now, but I don't want a software maintenance plan. I just want to make it work. we're going to leave that up to you as our resellers to make that work. We're not going to sit there and walk through an expired user on how to try to reinstall the program and try to get all the user account controls worked out and all our sharing environments. We do a lot of behind-the-scenes registry stuff in our setup programs and our setup WS to make sure all our Keystroke programs work for everybody. Otherwise, if you're on 6.3 or even 7.15, you're probably going to have a bad time with it. So, time to get people up to date. There's no reason to be on Windows 10 and be on an older version of Keystroke. Remember, 7.15 has been out. Kind of the last time we released anything on it's been 2 or 3 years ago. So you don't want to be on a new operating system with a 3-year-old point-of-sale program. So let's get your people up on Keystroke version 8, and it's easy to do. Just need to be on a plan. We'll send you a product ID, and we'll get you installed. Well, thanks very much. I'm going to open up the mics here for any questions. And before I do that, I just want to say next Wednesday, a week from today, there will not be a Keystroke Live. If you haven't signed up for the Dealer Summit and want to show up this weekend, the guys will be waiting for you. Happy to get you signed up, and I hope we'll see most of you there. So I'll unmute everybody right now. And please ask if you have any questions about any tech tips or if you have any suggestions for the future, what we might be discussing.
Yeah, I got a question. You mentioned you had a static IP. Is that necessary for the our customers to have static IPs or not?
It's not so necessary. We did an experiment last month with changing our Cayenne Genius to a dynamic IP address. And it did change itself about 4 times in a month. For 1 week, it was just solid. It just used the same IP. Then one Monday we came in, and it could have been that we have weather here and our router's rebooted. All of a sudden, our Cayenne Genius device stopped working, and we noticed that IP address switched around. We're tech guys. We like to be all on the spot. We have an Excel spreadsheet on who uses what static IPs on what machines, when that machine is taken offline, when it's been put offline. That might be a little overkill, but I would say if you don't want that call on a Saturday morning, you better set everybody up on a static IP. It's not too hard to do.
Okay.
Good question, Scott. Any other questions? Just to add to Scott's note, cellular devices with your Wi-Fi on your phone. You've got laptops. When you bring a laptop in or a notebook in, those are the things that are usually set up to randomly access a valid IP address. Well, that's great and fine until it happens to steal something from a mission-critical device like a Cayenne Genius, and then all of a sudden, because somebody brought a cell phone in before the Genius was powered up, they lost that IP and it just jumped to another one. And there's higher level ways to do dynamic IP addresses, putting in a MAC address and all that, but we're techy enough by just doing a static IP address. We don't want to be putting in MAC addresses for everyone. It's just so much easier to do static. Well, great. If there are no more questions, this was short and sweet, and I thank you guys all for attending. And call us with any questions. Call our support group here if any questions on any Windows 10 things that happen or any other tech tips you might want to share with the rest of us. Thank you.